Welcome to the Nightclub, guys. It's your host, the Night Wrencher. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to wire your entire car. We're going to start with part one, which is basically an introduction. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how electricity travels through the wires and how it actually works in conjunction with the different components inside of your guys' cars. As you guys know, we are on a 12-volt system on most cars in the United States, and I'm sure around the world as well. What that means is that you have a battery just like this one that produces 12 volts. A battery that produces 12 volts, when you're drawing it up on a diagram, is usually something with 6 cells, and each cell contains 2 volts worth of power. Imagine you have a couple AA batteries. When you have one battery that's 2.1 volts, two battery that's 4.2, three batteries that's 6.3, etc., etc. By the time you get to 12, you're going to have a 12.6 volt system. Even though it's 6 different batteries, it still is the same as a big battery like this. The difference between having 6 AA batteries and one big battery is that the big battery can obviously do more work. The bigger the battery, the more charge you can keep, and the more you can use the battery without it fully draining. When you draw it on the diagram, you're going to start off with one small cell, one big cell, one small cell, one big cell, one small cell, and then one big cell. Each one of these cells is 2 volts, like I mentioned before. The big ones are the positive side and the small ones are the negative side. Whenever you guys are drawing the negative side of anything, you're going to go ahead and make like this little arrow looking thing, and that's going to tell you that it's grounded. On cars that are negatively grounded, like basically every single car today, it means that the negative terminal is grounded directly to the cylinder block, to the chassis, because electricity actually has to travel in a circle. So we have, like I said, the battery right here, and we have the positive side over here, and this positive has to travel back toward the negative circuit through the battery and then reuse and activate it again. As you can see, I have 2 different terminals right here. This one has a positive lead. You guys can see that I'm touching it to itself and nothing is happening. And that's because I need to complete the circuit for it to actually do any kind of work. So if I wanted to complete the circuit, I'd have to connect here to here. As you guys can see, I'm touching this terminal, and as you guys can see, I'm touching the terminal on the battery as well. But it's not actually doing any kind of work because our skin has a higher resistance to electricity flow than the wire does. What that means is that when you guys have a copper wire, electricity is traveling through the copper wire, but not necessarily inside of the copper wire. It's traveling around the copper wire. Well, that's why when you guys have like one big fat wire versus a bunch of little wires, the big fat wire has a certain amount of surface area and a bunch of little wires has more surface area. So whenever you guys power big things like amps or air compressors, you always notice that they're fat wires with a lot of strands. That gives the electricity more surface area for it to travel. This only does a certain amount of work. The difference between a thick strand and a thin strand is that a thick strand will be able to handle more amps. We're going to go ahead and talk about that a little bit later. Like I mentioned before, the circuit has to be closed in order for it to do any work. Does that mean that the circuit's not working because it's not completing the circuit? It actually is. Since I'm in the middle of the circuit, that's what we call resistance. So I mentioned that we actually have to make electricity travel inside of a circuit. So we're going to go ahead and draw another battery. This is the negative lead, which is right here. This is the positive lead that I'm holding. And then in the middle, we're going to do this little squiggly line. And that means it's a resistance or a load. A load, it's something that uses up the electricity before it gets to the negative side and completes the circuit. That can be things like a light bulb, a horn, a stereo. It doesn't matter. Any kind of resistance inside the line will use up electricity, and typically it'll use up all of the electricity on the line, and then whatever's grounded will just complete the circuit. What that means is that if you have a battery that only produces 6 volts and you put it on a stereo that normally consumes 12 volts, like let's say this is a stereo, and it's going to go through the stereo, come back, and then it grounds out and completes the circuit. it's going to use up all 6 volts and you're going to get no voltage left over, but the stereo will still not turn on because it requires a minimum of 12 volts or at least something similar for all the electronics to actually work. You guys are going to notice that whenever you have resistance in between, let's say a light bulb, this is how you guys draw a light bulb. If you have low battery voltage, like let's say you are only producing 10 volts through a light bulb, the light bulb is going to be dim. Versus something that produces, let's say 14 volts at idle, let's say you have a really strong alternator producing 14 volts at idle, now the light's going to be really bright. And it all depends on what kind of voltage is actually going to the electronics. Newer cars have computers, so if they don't see the minimum voltage, it just won't turn anything on. Older cars, you'll either have weak components like slow moving windows, stereo that's too dim, your dash lights don't work, your headlights are dim. All of that could be a result of low voltage going into your circuit, even though you're hooked up the way you're supposed to. If you have any kind of dirty wire or a false connection in between the battery here and the light bulb is not going to be bright anymore. It's going to be dim because this, let's say this uses up 2 volts, and then the remainder of the 12 volts, now you're only getting 10 volts at the light bulb. So you got to make sure when you're double checking all of your electronics, you want to go ahead and check that you're actually getting the voltage that's required to whatever load you're trying to power. Going back to what I asked you guys earlier, just because I'm holding the wire and the terminal, does that mean that there is no current actually traveling through this wire? And is that why it's not doing anything? No, and let me show you guys what happens when I touch this. As you guys can see, as soon as the circuit is completed, the wire immediately starts to do work. If I was to bolt this on, positive to negative, and just leave it there, you would have the battery trying to send all of its current from the positive and force it into the negative. Eventually the wire would heat up, it'll start glowing red, the insulation would melt, and you're gonna have a dead battery. So when something like that happens, it's actually called a short circuit. So let's go ahead and say you guys have a circuit. This is another 12 volt system. This is a battery. This is the positive side. This is the negative side. And we're supposed to go and loop back around here. There is a light bulb. Let's say it is your headlight. And all of a sudden, these wires travel through your fender. And instead of it connecting the circuit to the light bulb like it's supposed to, this now ended up getting pinched on the body, and now you have a short circuit to ground. It means that the circuit was cut short of what it was supposed to do. Where the circuit was supposed to power your light bulb at 12 volts, now the light bulb's getting 0 volts, and all 12 volts are going to the ground, which means now you're gonna have a really hot wire going from the positive straight to ground. Just like I showed you guys on the big wire, whatever amps the battery is capable of producing, it's going to shoot it right through this wire, regardless of the wire size. So if you guys are using smaller wire, you're going to tend to toast that wire in an instant. Same thing that if you have a load that requires a lot of amps, you use small wires, you're going to toast that wire just like if it was a short to ground. So now let me go ahead and show you guys this example, but in real life. Okay, so I have this regular light bulb. It came out of one of my parts trucks, and I'm going to show you that this light bulb actually has 2 different circuits inside of it. What we have here is a dual filament light bulb. What that means is that there are actually 2 lights in a single light bulb. We have a high beam, which is for like a turn signal, and then we have a low beam, which is like for a marker light. And if you were to do both a marker light and a turn signal, it would look like this. So how does a light bulb like this actually work? We're gonna go ahead and draw out our diagram so I can show you guys. Again, this is a 12 volt circuit. We have our ground. We're gonna go ahead and just shortcut it by putting this arrow. Then you would have a switch, which is this little line right here, and a circle. This will be your marker light switch. And then you're gonna have another switch, and that's going to be your turn signal. Then we're gonna have 1 light bulb here and 1 light bulb there. Then they will both go to ground. I guess the question is, why does it show that it's 2 different light bulbs when there's only 1 light bulb here? Well, In order to simplify the diagrams and to make it known that there are two different filaments in the light bulb, sometimes the diagrams are going to be drawn independently. So if this one is your marker light, you see that we have an open circuit. When that circuit is closed, this light will turn on. Then when we have this switch for the turn signal, when this is closed, now this light will turn on. Sometimes instead of two different bulbs, they will have one bulb, so they will draw it out kind of like this. Instead of it being vertical, they will draw it sideways, and they will have one squiggle here, one squiggle here, and they will draw it out as a larger light bulb. This one will go to ground. That's where both of them meet. They will go to ground. Then this one will go to one switch, and this one will go to another switch. I drew it backwards, but you guys get the general idea of how it's supposed to work. Sometimes the diagrams are drawn like this, and then sometimes the diagrams are drawn like that. So you guys can see that we have the same two switches here. Here's one, here's another one, just like we had here. But instead of showing two different light bulbs, we have something that looks more like the realistic thing that we have here in our hand. One side goes to the smaller filament and the other one goes to the taller filament, and that's how you end up making a light bulb work. Typically, you're going to want to run something like a fuse. On a diagram, a fuse normally looks like a squiggly line with two dots. This could be in like a 5 amp, 7.5 amp, 10 amp, 15 amp, 20 amp, etc. And what this does is that when you have a short to ground, like let's say you're supposed to go to a light bulb, and then this is your ground right here. So typically you would have your fuse, you would have a light bulb, but instead of the circuit going all the way through and going to ground, let's say something happens to this wire, and now this wire ends up getting shorted to ground. What'll happen is now all of the current, like I showed you guys before, is going to try to send all of its power to the ground. So this is a very weak metal. It's calibrated to specific amp rating, and once it exceeds that amp rating, this thing is going to pop. The fuse is going to destroy itself. Fuses are typically one-time use and you cannot fix them. The plus side is that it's actually designed to save the circuit that it's sitting in front of. Let's say you have a wire going to an electric fuel pump at the back of your car. Your fuse panel is at the front of your car. You have a fuse over here. Now your wire has to travel the length of the car. If you have a short somewhere in the back of the car, now anything going from here forward is going to transmit the maximum amount of amps that the battery can produce. Lucky that we have a fuse here, so once it exceeds that amp rating, the fuse itself is going to blow. If the fuse was not here and you had a short somewhere in the back, the entire wire going from the battery to this ground spot is going to feed the entire 850 amps or 600 or 400 amps, whatever the battery has, is going to shoot it directly into the ground. Because it tends to be a smaller wire, that wire is going to cook, and it could possibly heat the insulation to a point that it will catch on fire. People who advocate not using fuses or something a little bit more advanced like a relay don't actually realize how dangerous wiring can be, especially in an older classic car. So I advise you guys that whenever you guys design any kind of circuit, you guys include a fuse in front of whatever you're trying to protect, because you're not just trying to protect the circuit, you're also trying to protect the rest of your car. If this wire is also in a loom of a bunch of other wires, well, guess what? Now that wire is going to heat up the other wires, and you're not going to have one bad wire. You can have 3 bad wires or 6 bad wires or 8 bad wires. Whatever's inside that loom, this wire is going to overheat to the point that it melts the other wires. So you guys have to keep in mind that whenever you're routing your system to keep it away from damage, but in case it does get damaged, which it could possibly be, you guys will already have that protection in front of the circuit. So you guys will maybe have a fuel pump that doesn't run anymore, but at least the rest of your car is fine. What I've got here are 2 different fuses. I've got a 5 amp on top, and then I've got a 30 amp on the bottom. What this means is that the circuit on top can power up to 5 amps through this wire before this fuse blows. What the bottom one means is that you can power up to 30 amps before the fuse blows. Sometimes what people will do is, let's say you have an electric fuel pump and it's shorting out. Typically it's supposed to use, like, let's say a 10 or 15 amp fuse, but it's shorting out. Something's wrong with the fuel pump and it's blowing your fuses. So what do? You take the 15 amp out and now you put in a 20 amp. Well, with the short circuit in mind, the fuse can still retain the extra 5 amps that the fuel pump is pulling, and now the fuel pump is working fine. But now, instead of it running off of the standard 15 amps that you guys were expecting, now it's running off of 20 amps that it's pulling. Now, because you guys have overfused the system, the fuse might not trip and you will have an overheating of the wire situation like I mentioned before. So you want to run the lowest amp possible for the most amount of work. What that means is that if you have an electric fan and they're pulling 14 amps, you want to put a 15 amp relay on it. If it's pulling 9 amps, you want to run a 10 amp relay. You don't want to run a 15 amp relay on something that only pulls 9 amps, because you want the system to be sensitive enough so that when you guys have a problem, the system will take care of itself and it will pop. You should always carry spare fuses, but you can try a 15, and then afterward, if it blows to 15, you guys know you guys have a problem. You guys can stop, check everything out, and make sure everything's okay without causing any kind of similar problem. A myth that I've heard repeated several times is that if you put a higher amp fuse, whatever you're fusing will pull that many more amps, and that is simply not true. A item, a light, a pump, a fan will pull as many amps that it needs for it to work. It will not pull anything more unless there is a problem. What that means is that if you have a 2 amp light bulb, it's always going to pull 2 amps. If you have a 5 amp fan, it's always going to pull 5 amps. If you have a 10 amp fuel pump, it's always going to pull 10 amps. If you put a 30 amp fuse on a 2 amp light, the light's not going to pull 30 amps. That just means that the circuit is protected up to 30 amps, which in all intents and purposes, unless it's an emergency situation where you just don't have any more fuses and you got to put whatever you got to put, that circuit is at a risk of overheating in case anything happens between the battery and the load. I mentioned between the battery and the load because if you have a light bulb and it goes to ground, but then you pinch it on the frame and it goes to ground, then that doesn't actually matter. Something like that wouldn't negatively affect your circuit because the whole point of the ground side is to go to ground. If it goes to ground by pinching the wire, then it still goes to ground. The circuit is still completed. If by chance it pinches the wire and it cuts the original ground wire and now it grounds through a different part of the car, same thing, it doesn't matter. As long as the circuit is grounded, the circuit is grounded and you have no problems. Where you might have an issue is that it was supposed to ground here at a nice clean piece of metal. You pinched it, now it's on a piece of dirty metal, and now you have resistance on the ground side. So now it wouldn't look like this, and you would have your light bulb, you have your ground side. This is cut, so now you are not connected to this ground side, and this is now grounding at, let's say, a piece of metal on your body, but the metal is now dirty. So now you have resistance on the ground side. So instead of the light pulling 12 volts, it's going to pull like 11 or 10 or 9 or 8. And then this is going to pull 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 volts. So whenever you guys are checking your electrical system, check the voltage before your load and after. A load is any kind of working part. So a light bulb, a fuel pump, an electric fan, those are all loads. So you want to check before and you want to check after. If you have 11 volts before the light bulb and 1 volt after, that means your ground side is pulling voltage. So you guys always want to keep that in mind whenever you guys are checking your circuits. I'm going to go over more advanced techniques in later videos, but this should cover the basics for anybody just trying to get their feet wet. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them down below. I might even make a video about it. I will see you guys all in the next one. Night Wrencher out.